We're here with Officer Bryan Wynn. He's from Cleveland, Ohio. He attended and graduated from the University of Toledo with his bachelor's degree. He comes from a law enforcement family. His mother served as a police officer for Cleveland for many, many years. His four uncles are currently served as parole officers and police officers in Cleveland. And he has 8 years of experience in law enforcement and currently serves as a police officer for Bowling Green State University. Mr. Wynn, thank you for coming on. Wanted to just did I miss anything about your background or anything that anybody else would need to know in relation to law enforcement and policing in Black and brown communities?
So I would say, first of all, thank you for having me. But I guess one of the big things that I feel plays a lot into what we see a lot of today in the world that I'm very passionate about is that I'm also a defensive tactic instructor for the state of Ohio. And basically, what that means is I am licensed and trained by the state of Ohio to train police officers in hand to hand combative tactics, handcuffing procedures. I also can help write policies and procedures for departments or academies. Um, and basically, a big thing of where I play is helping officers navigate use of force continuum.
That's great. That's great. So I wanted the current slide. I wanted to just have you take a look at that and just kind of maybe talk about what jumps out at you in this slide in the context of policing in Black and brown communities.
So one of the things when I think specifically about policing in a Black and brown community, in regards to you asking me about the picture that I see in front of me, my attention navigates to the upper top left corner. Currently I live in Toledo, Ohio. Um, Primarily, I navigate more of the areas that are heavily populated by African Americans. When you have a police department whose demographic can relate to the area that they work, I personally believe that you have a higher chance of more positive law enforcement interaction and also better cooperation with the public. People want to see their, I know this may sound kind of archaic, but there's a sense of comfort when you see and work with your own. There's not very much that needs to be heavily explained. It's almost as if I know how you feel. I know what your struggle is because outside this uniform, I have the same struggle as you. I recently you've been hearing about all this, Blue Lives Matter type stuff, and that's I have there's some dichotomy when it comes to that statement of Blue Lives Matter and this whole thin blue line thing. But the thing is when I'm only blue 8 hours out of the day when I work, on an average 5-6 days out of the week for 8 hours, I'm blue.
Right.
Every single day I wake up till I go to sleep, I'm Black. So when I engage with African American citizens, there's a sense of an expectation of trust between the two of us, and that may not be always. I'm not gonna say every Black person I come in contact with is on the up and up with me. It's just the nature of the beast, but there's a sense of understanding when that engagement happens. And even with the brown community, I feel like our communities over the years have blended so much together. My best friend throughout most of my childhood was Puerto Rican. And I spent many of weeks or weekends with him and his family. When I went to college, he actually moved in with my mother for a year, and there was a concept I actually had no idea. And me also then having that relationship with the Hispanic communities, there's just so many parallels that is basically like talking about the same thing.
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay, let me take you to another. So the purpose of this panel discussion will be to provide insight and context to the current state of affairs relating to civilian police interactions. Secondly, is to foster a robust and even-handed conversation. You spoke a little bit about that, as you're saying. Certainly not all.
Right.
You put the balance between blue being blue 8 hours of the day, and then being black the other 16 hours, I guess, 16 hours of the
Or
day.
all the whole thing.
Yeah, yeah. And then the third reason is to provide, and probably what's most important, is to provide solutions and a way forward for the younger generation. Younger generation, we're talking ages, I don't know, 14 to 24, 25, maybe 20, maybe even 27. Is to provide a way forward and some solutions when it comes to interactions with law enforcement. One of the speakers that we have is Pastor Tommy Bridgeman,
Okay.
and he's written a book. It's called the book is called The Police Encounter Bible. And one of the things with this book, it just talks about, it's an easy read, and the book is designed to equip individuals, families, teens with a way, a workbook, if you will, on how to work with encounters with police. And when I first picked up the book, when I first started looking through it, I thought maybe it was going to be not so even-handed.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was going to be kind of anti-law enforcement, you know.
Okay.
Um, but actually it wasn't. I mean, one of the chapters, at the end of the chapters, as it talks about, what your rights are, what you can do, what you can't do. But the last chapter is comply, comply. And it sounds so simple. It sounds so simple,
Mm-hmm.
but as he explained it, from a law enforcement standpoint, it looks a lot different in dealing with the public. Can you speak to that a little bit, Officer Wynn?
So, um, I've given a couple discussions, and the majority of them have. Well, I think all of them may have been with younger groups, especially teenagers. And I remember a couple times. I think it's, yeah, maybe about a couple, if not all. One question was presented to me, and it was, "What piece of advice could you give, you know, a young brother, in a law enforcement, engagement? What is a piece of information that you can give them?" And my biggest thing is to survive the encounter. And I think that may kind of go hand in hand. I haven't read that book, but when he says, comply, even to this day, as a police officer, when I get pulled over, I go through a complete ritual of basically disabling myself and making myself look the least bit intimidating as possible. For one, this cop has no idea who I am, what I've been through, what I have in this vehicle. He has no idea at this point if I may have just killed somebody before I got on the road and drove 15 over. He has no idea. I have a big lifted truck, tinted windows. He has no idea when he approaches. Um, when he runs stuff through the computer, it's not going to immediately pop up that I'm black. So he has no idea when he comes to my vehicle who I am or what I'm going to do. On the other hand, I have no idea what this officer has gone through or what his intentions are. He could have drank before he came to work, went to a Klan rally before he came to work. I don't know what he's been through. I just have to know I have to do what I have to do to make myself the least bit intimidating just so I can make it home. Now, in saying that, if there is something shady going on within a situation, this is why I say make sure you survive the encounter. Arguing and trying to fight with the cop on the scene is not going to be conducive to you surviving to even get to court to then hold the officer accountable. So
Mm.
I think one of the biggest things that I tell young brothers of brown or black descent, that your main goal is to survive the encounter and then go for, the justice afterwards.
Yeah,
Survive the encounter, justice later.
that's awesome. Yeah, survive the encounter and justice later.
Yep.
I tell you that makes a lot of sense. I want to take you to another screenshot. So this comes from the Washington Post, and it talks about Black Americans are killed at a much higher rate than white Americans per million. Obviously, they're just on a total aggregate number. More whites are killed because their numbers are greater, but per million deaths, blacks account for a whole lot more than six or seven times what it would be for Caucasians. Um, what do you think of what comes to your mind from a law enforcement perspective when you see a statistic like this? And understanding we can use statistics and make them say anything that we want to say, but just generally speaking, what comes out
Right.
from your
So what comes out to me when I see this is, if you so where are you based out of per se?
Dayton, Ohio?
Dayton, Ohio. So what's a prominent suburb in Dayton, Ohio, in that
Springboro.
area?
Springboro.
Okay. Springboro. If you took the time to look at or find out how many officers they have working for that department, and compare that to what's the most urban area in around the Dayton
City of Dayton.
area.
City of Dayton. So
It's the city of Dayton. And then
yes.
if you go and look at their number of police, and I don't mean, and I guess when I say this, it's more so looking at, if you take a more suburban area or a more affluent area per se, you're going to have less officers within that area. But then in a more predominantly black area, you're going to have a higher chance, or not a higher chance, you're going to have a higher population of law enforcement. Now,
Okay.
that can be dependent on the population, or my perceived thinking is, you don't want to agitate too much the rich and the famous and the high almighties. It's much easier to arrest and prosecute, the poorer areas. You have a higher chance of winning case battles, because a lot of people within urban areas are, especially in this time of COVID, are not so much worried about saving for attorney fees, court fees. They're more worried about, making sure their kids eat, making sure they can get gas in their vehicles to go to work. More affluent areas, they have that ability to have that capital, that if they get a speeding ticket, they'll fight it all the way to the Supreme Court if need be. They have
Mhm.
that time and that ability. Where in more urban communities you don't. So when I see these numbers of more deaths when it comes to, per million, when it comes to officers and African Americans, is that our community is more so flooded with this sense of law enforcement. I think right now in the city of Toledo, there was uh, a a bit of an argument where a more affluent area was appalled that the city would even think of having a outdoor gun range in their area. I mean, they were just sick, and all they could think about is how this is going to reflect on the area, and oh, now our kids are going to be, closer to guns and the essence of violence. But yet in the city of Toledo, you know, maybe 3 blocks away from a high school, you have the jail. Not necessarily jail, you have a prison.
Mhm.
So you have young black kids walking around in their neighborhood, and one of the largest complexes in their neighborhood is a prison that they can see practically every single day of their life.
Wow.
But yet that's not an issue. But an issue about having a gun range is more a entire prison system in your backyard. And these are the things I think that all culminate as to why these encounters, happen so much. It's almost like it's predetermined by our criminal justice system. I know recently they've talked about this pipeline from public schools right into prison systems. If you look at
Mhm.
the system in which a lot of schools go through in the inner city, is not a lot of free thinking. It's more of, you come here, you sit here, you do this, you get up, go, sit down, do this, bell ring, get up, go, eat, 30 minutes, eat, get up, go. It's very similar to how a jail is ran.
Wow. Well, I tell you what, that's bone chilling on that. I'm gonna read an excerpt from, because this book is called, again, the Police Encounter Bible, and one chapter is called The Business of Policing. The
Mhm.
Business of Policing. I'm gonna read an excerpt. It says
Okay.
10 years ago, there were only 5 private prisons in the country with a total of population of 2,000 inmates. Now there are 100 prisons with 62,000 inmates. It is expected by the coming decade that number will hit 360,000 according to statistics. What are your thoughts about that, Officer Wynn?
Uh, it's definitely an example of big business and almost the perpetual cycle of slavery that we still inherently as America still have, whether we like to admit it or not. Um, I just had it right on the tip of my tongue. Um, in regards to that, oh, I know that there has been this talk about defunding,
Yes, defunding the police.
police departments, and this may be a little bit of contradictory to that. I don't necessarily believe that there needs to be a defunding of police. I think there needs to be a reallocation of funds, but more so, I see more issues when it comes to things that happen within the court as far as punishment and fines go. When you can, you know, stuff like marijuana, the or having a suspended license, the things and all the payments that you have to go through, just to retain your license so that you can go to work to then make the money to pay for the court fees and X, Y, and Z, is very counterproductive, and it almost makes it even harder to get back on the straight and narrow path.
Yeah,
Um,
see.
marijuana has been illegal for so long until the government has been able to find a way to make money out of it. And now it's practically legal everywhere.
Mhm.
There's just so much, blatant common sense, big business that comes into the face of when we talk about um, um, prison systems and why they're being so heavily monetized.
Yeah, when you monetize those things, it really puts it in a different, because then you got to keep that going.
Right. Right.
And we had one of our other panelists talked about, he said slavery wasn't abolished, it just changed faces. What
What
do
was
you
that?
say to something like that?
Your mic had cut out. What did you say?
We had one of our panelists that said slavery wasn't necessarily abolished, it just took on a different form.
Oh, absolutely.
And you know, that whole thing is just it's very interesting. So I definitely appreciate your insight, Officer Wynn. I mean, I tell you what, we could probably have you on and just as a sole panelist and talk about some things that go more in depth, but we certainly appreciate your time. And we're gonna look forward to hearing your insight with the other panelists on Friday, this coming Friday.
Yep.
At 9:30. And do you have any closing comments?
Nope. No real closing comments. Can't wait to see everybody on Friday.